In a world where anyone can have a podcast, Peter von Panda is one of them. Rants are taken to a whole new level. This is the Peter von Panda Podcast, a giant waste of time.
All right, Panda Nation, what's happening? As you know, I'm a car guy. Grew up in Detroit, love cars. Have a buddy of mine back in Detroit, Brian, who's just been into Porsches his whole life. Got me kind of into them because I wasn't a really big fan of the 911. You know, I remember when I was a kid, I'd go out to California and 911s were all the rage, like in the 80s. You know, those big rear quarter panel covers and stuff like that. It was just, they were all over. My uncle even had a 911, really thin sheet metal. I remember actually him pushing the door closed once and it didn't close all the way, and he kind of pushed it like in the middle and bent the door skin. So I just kind of remember 911s. It was a green 911, probably late 70s or something like that. But hey, you know, I've always respected them. They've been a really interesting and iconic car for Porsche. But basically what I wanted to talk to you about today is I think being a designer at Porsche has probably got to be the worst design job out there. And I'm sure the Porsche designers love it. You know, Porsche designed some other things like from radios to other industrial things. But my issue with it is that the Porsche 911, that iconic rear-engined, circular headlamp, right up the front, and the kind of the light bar going across the bottom, and kind of the fastback design to a point in the rear, you know, has been so iconic that they've never really drifted away from it. And it wasn't until about the 80s that they tried things like the 944 and the 928, and then I think the 968 too. But, you know, they came back to that 911 design. And my problem is that as a designer, when you're using that as your anchor and your reference point, you really are really limited in what you can do. And so I feel like if I were a designer and I said, hey, listen, I want to make the ultimate supercar and this is what I want to do, you know, you really just can't drift that much. And when you look at cars like the Cayenne and the Panamera, man, they've had to borrow that 911 design language, stretch it out to four doors, or turn it into a SUV form. You know, it's just, to me, there's so little opportunity to be creative. In fact, when I saw like the pictures of the newest 911 and they were talking about, oh, this is great, and look at the back end is a little higher and a little beefier, and man, the fenders are flared more, and there's some vents now over the wheel arches to kind of reduce the tendency for the front end to lift up and all that. I mean, it's like all you have the opportunity to do is take what has been done before and maybe modify it wider, lower, bigger, hunchier, you know, stronger, more muscular, whatever. But nobody at Porsche is really doing, you know, unfortunately, anything that's just totally antithetical to the 911 design. And that's where I feel like as a designer, if I were really talented and proficient in my field, I probably wouldn't want to go to Porsche. I just wouldn't want to do it. I'd want to go somewhere else. You know, I think McLaren is doing some really amazing things. I think even the Corvette designers going from the front engine to the mid-engine layout, you know, what an awesome opportunity that is to take an iconic design, try to carry over the pieces that are familiar, and yet do something that's never been done in a production Corvette before. I think at Dodge, you know, the Challenger and the Demon, you know, again, all based on the same thing, but you know, that was kind of going back to the archives and doing something new in a way that was unlike anything that they were doing before. Even the the Charger, you know, from its first iteration to its current has really, you know, gone in a different direction, and I like it, you know, not totally 180, but I think that there is an opportunity to exercise that design muscle. So I really think, you know, and that's not the only one, like the Ford GT, what a departure from the original one, which was very heavily heritage based on the original Ford GT40. You know, I just think like a lot of designers aren't necessarily holding on to the old like Porsche does. In some ways it's okay, but in other ways, man, how can you really come up with something that just blows people's minds, is really different? You know, the 918, the Carrera GT, some of those things were a little bit different, but it's still, they showed their roots on the 911, and I really think, man, just open it up, let them do whatever, and then see, you know, is that going to be a future direction for the company? Can you abandon some of the old design elements? Can you carry over some of them in a way, you know, if you're looking at it from a clean sheet and say, hey, these are great ideas, we'll keep these. So I don't know, but I just feel like Porsche designers on the whole must be bored for being kind of reined in so much. So that's it. That's my rant. Hey, stay tuned. Peter von Panda out.
This is the Peter von Panda Podcast, a giant waste of time.